I wanted to watch the #1 show in Russian state TV, Vladimir Solovyov. He is a Russian propagandist. In fact, I'd say he's probably their biggest Russian propagandist. And he released a segment talking about Donald Trump's recent meeting with Zelensky and the ending of American aid to Ukraine. And he's come to the conclusion, again, this is the #1 propagandist in Russia, that Donald Trump is not an ally of Ukraine, but an ally of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and their brutal invasion. Listen to what they have to say. This is from the Russian Media Monitor. Julia Davis and a lot of others do good work for this. Translating it for Americans. There is 1 million people on the other side. There is 1 million men. The Ukraine Nazis on the front line. We have 600,000. Let's say we get the goal of, this isn't true, by the way. I bet the Ukrainians wish it was true. 1 million soldiers in the trenches versus 600,000 Russians. Let's say we set a goal of liberating Ukraine. The Soviet army completed the task of liberating Ukraine when it was opposed by a German group that was half its size. Therefore, if we want to maintain these proportions by using weapons currently at our army's disposal, what should we be doing? Right now, there are 1.5 times less of our troops. We should increase our troop size by 3 times, so that it's twice the size of theirs. Is our society prepared to enlarge the army by 300%? Right now, our armed forces are 1% of the population, not the ones on the front lines, but all who serve in our armed forces. Our society should ask itself, what are we ready to do to increase our numbers or to escalate by moving to another type of weapons? We should make decisions based on this. My God, don't they seem peaceful? Don't they seem ready to make peace? Increasing your army by 300%, using new weapons and bombs, escalate, escalate, escalate. Look, I'm not saying that the Russians under no conditions would agree to at least a temporary ceasefire. What I am saying is that you need to be prepared for the situation where they're not, or that it's just a stage, which I think is highly likely. We got the United States government giving up NATO membership, giving up American troops in Ukraine, giving up Ukraine being at the negotiating table, conceding to Russian demands on the end of Ukrainian martial law, and then pretending that it's an American demand. We've got the ending of American electrical aid to Ukraine, military aid to Ukraine, intelligence sharing to Ukraine. Trump's doing all this through this peace through strength policy. And then you go over to the Russians, and they're doing record-setting drone attacks against the Ukrainians. They're launching missiles against hospitals. They're launching missiles against apartment blocks. They're launching missiles against hotels and schools and churches. The human safari continues in Kherson. There is no de-escalation on the Russian side. There's not even an attempt to approach the verbiage of de-escalation. Again, this is the #1 Russian state news program for state media. This is the messaging the Russian government wants the Russian people to hear. Let's increase the army by 3 times. Don't you think it's a little naive to just trust Putin here after lying about invading twice in the last decade? They're so ready for peace that more North Korean troops are currently on their way. North Korea has sent more troops to Russia, South Korean spy agency says. Hey, when you end long-range strikes, which is supposed to be a deterrent on continuation of more North Korean troops, when you end that policy, end all aid to Ukraine, you know what that says? We don't care about deterrence. Do what you want. And that's what the North Koreans have obliged us with. We look at what is currently happening in the West. Can't we see? The masks are off. The masks are off.
Маски спали.
We see that Europe is fully behind this war. Europe is the center where the ideas, money, and actors of what was called the U.S. Democratic Party have ran off to. Okay, so Nancy Pelosi runs Germany, apparently. Okay? Look, this doesn't need to make sense, okay? It just needs to be the evil woke we must crusade against, and this horrible anti-Russian, anti-Christian deep state must be crushed. And I guess that's represented by the Democratic Party, guys. So, hey, guys, we're the card-carrying Satanists as the final line against the Russian attack, okay? That's the narrative. It's the center of liberal democracy. It's totally godless, totally satanic. But we should look much deeper. We should see how the provincial Europe that has lost its meaning in its core, the provincial Europe is being torn to pieces. How do they know about this woke shit? They do it to appeal to American conservatives. And if they see a sort of propaganda succeed somewhere, why wouldn't they adopt it themselves? But, I mean, a lot of it is speaking towards an American audience. When I hear Putin talk about cancel culture, he's speaking towards Americans. He's trying to make the Americans more sympathetic to their cause. Oh, well, of course, I mean, don't be mean to the Russians. The Russians were canceled. Of course they had to bomb the Ukrainians. Does it sound stupid? Does it sound silly? Yes. Are they doing it anyway? Yes. Can you imagine how talentless these people are? They simply have nothing else to do. If they can afford a luxury of suddenly taking off to London, to pet Zelensky on his head, to show Trump that they are against him, they are no longer fighting just against us, they have also challenged Trump. I will watch Trump go to war with Europe. It will give me great pleasure. Here's how it will go. The annexation of Greenland, the disintegration of NATO, the destruction of the European Union. Trump will no longer recognize the EU. There will be an economic war between America and Europe. I don't rule out that with respect to the aid to Ukraine. That was frozen. Trump will say, why don't we enter into a military technological cooperation with Russia, an alliance with Russia? Here is who the real enemies of America are. The satanic Europe and the European Union. They are deceitful, nasty creatures. Trump has already hinted about this yesterday. Trump will say, I have nothing against Russia. The liberal democratic dirtbags have maligned Russia. The same way they have maligned me. In reality, it's not this way at all. What's the point? Let's see what is beneficial to us. He will say, Russia says that it needs Russian lands that were taken by the Ukrainian Nazis, and I'm saying the same thing. I need Greenland because it suits our national interests. What's the problem? The inviolability of borders? Are you joking? What inviolability of borders? Trump will say, let's go back to realpolitik. Trump will say, I don't care if the Russians are in Odessa, Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, or Kiev. He'll say, what do I care? All I need is the Panama Canal to be American, and for Greenland and Canada to join America. This is important. It's in our national interest. What he's described right now was one of the big fears I had from the United States, even if it's just negotiating, talking about Panama and Greenland as if their sovereignty does not matter and we can conquer them as an evil empire, is that when you send out that message, how could you ever go on the international stage and say Russia can invade and conquer Ukraine? That's not allowed. Oh, was it allowed to conquer Greenland? Was it allowed to conquer Panama? Was it allowed to conquer Canada? Why would the president of the United States can talk so openly about conquering this and conquering that, but when us, Russia, bullied by NATO, cornered by the satanic European demons, we defend ourselves through a little bit of offensive action, now you're angry? Whether or not this is the type of things that convince European capitals, this is the type of things that underpins support from the population.
И все.
And that's it.
Сказочка-то может
This is how
закончиться.
this fairy tale may end.
Потому что
In reality,
у Америки и
America
России
and
на
Russia
самом
have
деле
no conflicts. Unless you watch my show any other day of the week where I'm saying basically death to America on every show.
конфликта-то нет. У нас
We
нет
don't
общей
share a border
границы,
we
из-за
could be
которой
fighting
мы могли
over.
бы там воевать. От
Russia and
формального
America
экономического союза
may benefit from an
Россия и
economic
Америка могут
alliance.
выиграть гораздо больше, чем от союза
A lot
России,
more than from America's alliance with
скажем
Europe.
так, Америки с Европой.
Okay, so again, California has a larger economy than Russia. American businesses are not that eager to go back to Russia. Russia is very eager to have access again to American markets. Very eager. And I think they'd be very eager for business investments, considering, or like, you know, mineral deals with the United States, and how that could stop America from stepping in front of them when they're doing empire building in the future, as well as helping them remove the economic pressure that we've worked 3 years to build, or since 2014 if you want to continue the Obama policy. What he's essentially saying here is America's an empire, Russia is an empire. We don't share a border, I mean, unless you count Alaska, but we don't share a border, so we don't really need to challenge each other in our empires. You just conquer Greenland, you just conquer Canada, you just conquer Panama, and we'll take on Europe. Hell, you like us more than the Europeans do anyway. I mean, you guys can work with us better. I mean, it's a better deal for it. Bullshit. Europe is made up, NATO is made up of 1 billion people. Europe is a continent of consumers. They're like our 4th largest agricultural trading partner. Like we trade a lot with them. The idea that we'd get more trading with Russia than Europe is preposterous. But I mean, you know, Russian state TV, so what do you expect?
Америка не видит в нас конкурента экономического. А в Европе видит.
America doesn't see us as an economic competitor the way it sees Europe.
Поэтому
That's why Trump sees this and goes, why?
Смотрит и говорит, а почему? Другой вопрос, как мы на это
Another
смотрим?
issue is how we see this.
Какие наши
How do we
представления?
perceive it?
Ну уж скажем так прямо.
Let's openly
У
say
нас
we have
гораздо
significantly
меньше
fewer
проблем.
problems
То
with
есть просто
America
на порядок меньше проблем с Америкой, чем с
than with Europe,
Европой, если
if you
рассмотреть
consider
нашу
our
историю.
history.
Да, на
Yes,
территории России
American
были
occupation
оккупационные
forces
американские войска после
were on
гражданской
the
войны.
territory
И мы
of
это не
Russia after the
собираемся
Civil
прощать.
War. We are not planning to forgive them for this,
Но не сравнить
but you
с
can't
тем
compare
ужасом,
it.
который нам
He's talking about like post Russian government collapse, we sent some intervention forces to intervene in the Russian Civil War. They didn't end up really amounting to anything. It didn't like change the outcome of the war, but this is something that has stayed within the Russian psyche.
доставался от европейцев.
With the horrors the
Поэтому,
Europeans have
когда
brought us.
твари типа
That's why when
немецких
creatures like
политиков,
German
там,
politicians,
Бербок,
like
Урсула фон дер
Baerbock,
Ляйен,
Ursula von der Leyen, Scholz,
Мерц
murders, open
открывают
their
свои
dirty,
грязные,
stinky
вонючие рты,
mouths,
то туда надо
we should
вбить
drive a
осиновую
wooden
иглу, а
stake
если
into
нет
them.
рядом
And if not a
осинового
wooden
орехового,
stake,
орешник
then a
отлично
Reshnik
полетит.
may
И
fly.
сейчас, когда
He's talking about like a weapon.
Трамп
Right
убирает
now, with
зонтик,
Trump taking away
вот вся
the
эта
nuclear
сволота,
umbrella,
которая говорит
all
о
of these
размещении
dirtbags
войск
who are
НАТО на
talking
территории
about
Украины
placing
должны
NATO
понять,
troops on the
а
territory
нас
of
ничего не
Ukraine
сдерживает
should
для
understand that
того, чтобы
nothing is holding
перевести
us back
эскалацию на совершенно другой
from
уровень.
moving this escalation to a totally different
И
level,
использовать
and to
оружие,
use the
которое
kind of
позволит, не
weapons
привлекая дополнительных людей в армию,
that won't require additional
решить
people for
задачи,
the army.
поставленные
He's threatening to nuke Berlin to
верховным
fulfill the task set by
главнокомандующим,
the Supreme Commander
но совершенно иным
with a
уровнем
totally different number of casualties
жертв на территории
on the territory of the Nazi
нацистских стран.
countries. I wish like we could do this stupid shit that the Russians do with the Nazis. These British Saddam Reich The British Reich in Saddam's Iraq must be brought down. The British made those Viet Cong fight against, like, everything is the British. King George is the fault of everything. My God, these British cartels on the southern border giving our children fentanyl, serving King George again through the poisoning of our youth. That's the equivalent of what's happening right now. It's fucking stupid, it's silly, but it's been socially accepted in Russian society that if you just bomb somebody, just call them a Nazi enough times, and then, okay, it's okay to kill their kids.
Телеграм-канал Соловьев. Такой
Telegram channel Solonyov. It's a good, humane morning. And now,
погода и
the weather,
время голова.
followed by Gunov's time.
Доброе утро.
Good morning.
Здравия желаю, Владимир Владимирович.
Здравия желаю. Как
How is your
настроение?
mood?
Как
How is the
погода?
weather?
Чё-то вышел,
I
хлюпает
stepped
под
out.
ногами.
There are sloshings underfoot.
Настроение боевое,
The mood is
ветру
militant.
благоприятное.
The direction of the wind is
После,
favorable.
вашего-
To follow up on what you were just
разговора
saying,
о том, что Европа должна
Europe has
быть
been reduced to the
насекомым,
size of an
чтобы
insect,
не было
and once and
источником
for
Третьей
all,
мировой войны.
so it won't be the
Что
source of
еще
World
раз
War
повторюсь,
III. I will say it once again, I am firmly convinced that we should thoroughly bang them up to make sure they will never rise again. Yeah, I trust these guys. They won't attack again. I trust them. They won't attack again, guys. Don't worry. Okay.